Warm sunny days promise to be good and successful. I'm already in 2 villages and we're not lucky. Gap led the same on a bumpy road. Sitting next to me and looking out the window. Plowed field at the feast, pine forest in the distance, on the road leading to another force. Gray dozing in the back seat. Field ended and the road went deep into the forest of sulfur. Opened eyes looked out the window at the sparse trees, yellowing autumn foliage. Looking forward, I looked at the round dial of the built-in clock. 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Soon evening. Well, what a long time, asked the leader. More than 15 kilometers, maybe 20, answered the skinny red-haired guy in the place of the navigator. He had only recently looked at the graded map, figured out where they should already be and put it in the glove compartment. Gap nodded in the affirmative. They really just checked on the map, though. That turned somewhere wrong. I'd been going for too long, and the village can't see everything. Terrain it's new for them, you can get lost. Gray takes his gang on an autumn tour of the village. Now it's time to shake the fat villagers. Harvest assembled, many received good proceeds from the sale of poultry for that pork. How once a season, to look into such a special economy, who recently slaughtered a boar and brought it to the market. Or geese. They are usually just money at this time and are found. For such an autumn raid on the villages can be good to collect money, enough for the winter. Besides, it's a simple thing, without much risk. Need to just look ahead, where there are no dogs in the yard, yes, so that the house to pick up was not sheds with living creatures. As soon as the owners go to the market in the morning, you can look at the light, clean the house. That's why Gray tried not to run in vain. Chose different areas each time, new routes, never walked twice in the same villages. Worked clean, carefully, no noise and no hassle. The car was put on, taken specially. Inconspicuous, who will pay attention to the old car, covered in road dirt? Ordinary transport for such places. A number not visible, didn't even have to grind. Road came out, climbed a small hillock and emerged from reading in the woods on a wide meadow. Away one could see the domes of a small village church. In at the end of the meadow a couple of cows grazed. This fine, since there is a cow, means there is also money for milk and butter. Driving to the village, Gap slowed down. Attract attention to frisky rides they do not need, especially that they always drive slowly down the street. Look side to side carefully, habitual views snatching solid courtyards. Take note, where there are big or small dogs. Dogs Sulphur basically didn't want to deal with. A lot of years ago, because of the master's mongrel, a good deed broke, they were then swept up. Since then he swore he did not deal with the dog beast. Although gapped him and offered to resolve this issue in a coordinated manner, but Gray he was interpreting that in order to resolve the issue of a dog, you need to get close enough to it, and you can't do it without too much noise. Furthermore, we are not talking about homemade city bubbles and balloon glasses, a vicious watchdog joke, guarding the master's goods in their booth. Certainly, from this had to bypass the rich houses, in which there was clearly something to profit from. But in the wilderness, usually not all yards have dogs. Can find more like this, where the owners for some reason do not keep the mongrel on a chain. Here these are the right clients. But in this village, how bad, in every yard of the Layla some kind of flea infection. There were already a couple of such villages, who had to pass without stopping. Gap, then you were mad as hell, but sulfur infused. I had to leave the salty slurping. Really in this wilderness, too, in every yard there will be a mongrel. Whom are they afraid here? Only the outer house with a large birch tree strewn with bright yellow foliage turned out to be. We've eachly to you. Huge red cats slowly went into the ajar gate. Nobody did not rush at him with barking, yes, and on a passing someone else's car, too, do not start talking if only the house is already very small, even though behind the gates there was a barn and some other buildings. Gap quite smiled. Well, at least one house can be fenced. He slowly drove the car along the crooked, long unpainted wooden fence. In the front garden under the windows bloomed autumn asters and large bright red dahlias. Ginger the cat already crossed the yard without interference, and walked along the roof of the barn. They slowly passed this last house on the edge of the village. Road walked along the meadow's side of the forest. Towards the car on the road was a little dry old woman. And she was dragging a large box of mushrooms on her back, and it was hard for her. For every step she leaned on two sticks, like skiing. "Not as our skier going home," Skinny grunted through his teeth. Machine was driving slowly, almost without stopping. In rearview mirror they watched how the grandmother really went into the gate of the last house, that from a birch or a red cat, and without a dog in the yard. Yes, it was the mistress of this only house in the whole village, who was not noticed for the case. I find that a grandmother goes to the forest for mushrooms, or for the winter itself and collects, or for sale. Second option would be better, then not alone, then mushrooms would definitely be found in the city on the market, not 5 kopecks worth. Machine drove into the forest and stopped. "Well, what's pending?" asked Gapt. "We spend the night here." I similar. "I'll look what they like." In the morning the old woman got in again. "We'll go," so we look at her calmly. Sulphur understood that accomplices are already tired of these trips through the wilderness. In one of the first villages, they managed to clean 3 houses at once, and very well. Then the mood in the gang was fighting, and the last few villages were unsuccessful, and Gapt began to smoke more and more on halts, spitting viciously to the side. Drag was young and obeyed the leader implicitly. A hair gap there was a thief and besides greedy. Fatty gave it to me right away. Sulphur understood that from this empty-handed village leave it just can't be, even though he didn't like the idea of robbing a lonely old woman. Here when they cleaned the house of wealthy villagers, who also had crystal in a sideboard, and the atmosphere was rich, so there was the owner's gold, and the money was tucked away decently so, and there will obviously be a bit of a catch. Some had a premonition of Gray for this house. My heart was restless. Not well, it's all a premonition. Gray has never failed, so they traveled around the great vast country for 6 years without much adventure. But works in the same city, moves on, doesn't stay anywhere for long, a couple of months at the most. And each time objects are chosen in different areas. Here and walks with him Gapt. You know Gray won't risk it in vain. From common they picked up in the zone. He went there stupidly. Sulphur immediately laid eyes on him. A boy called Serpent for his long and absolutely skinny figure. Sulphur told him back then that if he wants to be with them, then the drive will have to be changed. He has nothing to do with reptile years. So former Serpent the loser just got skinny. For him Sulphur was not just an authority, there were legends about him in the zone. When the kid went to jail, Gray took him under his wing, otherwise the guy would be unhappy. Had such squishy people immediately run into them in an adult way, served time, fight, calmly, and was grateful for this to Gray. Yes, and like Skinny, that the leader does not introduce them to shady deeds, and didn't like to take risks. Skinny was not at all eager to return to the bunk again. But you are not gapped yet. Their rest service. We'll go and unravel everything. This should already be the last village. After they planned to look into the nearest town, we checked on the map to immediately rush towards the city, and then move to another area. Their villages are cleaned, by season, renting a house soon, have a good rest. And now warmed up a little and back in the car. Skinny curled up in the back seat. Gapt walking by the hood, smoke and nervously spit something, mutters. Trey. More likely, he wanted to swear. In this village, too, some kind of solid house, they will surround this hut on the edge of the village. So return almost 2 hours later means, no dog and will be able to work. But he looked gloomy and read books. Got out of the car and stretched. Which is long, thin. His face is so long. Elongated, and looks like a horse's face. I still don't quite understand what is so annoying about Gap Tove. House poor, the barn is empty, behind the barn a pile of firewood to chop for anyone. And little Sarah checks for a long time no living creatures were found. Not chickens are not like that, especially the pigs. Cows haven't been there for many years, doesn't even smell. It seems that of all domestic animals, only that red cat. Grandmother alone in the house, fiddling with mushrooms. Tomorrow we'll probably go again and most likely, what's before dawn. I guess I already collected everything. Now gotta keep going, so let's watch, guard, as soon as it starts to light up. But I wouldn't count on a big jackpot. From what was seen through the window, the situation is miserable. Day you can see it in the house. Gapped again spat irritably and muttered a couple of strong phrases. He was clearly annoyed. Fine at least, that this is the last village. There you look at the town, a couple of apartments will be cleaned and the mood will be normal again. I gapped. You went to sleep in the back seat. Agri Stealing stood by the car for a long time. Drag sat on the hood and looked at the starry sky. Such that you won't see the sky in any city. Here is a little star floating along the Milky Way. This the satellite is flying, the guy guessed. He knew only the bucket Big Ursa and nearby could find her teddy bear. Gray did not look at the sky. He looked towards the village. Though from here and it was not visible, but the thoughts of an experienced thief were there, in that yard, from where he had just returned and where they would go at dawn on business. Under the morning became chilly and damp. The gardens were covered with gray fog. Autumn all the same. Sulphur haven't slept for a long time. Gap got out of the car and was about to smoke, but changed his mind. The smell of tobacco smoke will be heard far away in that humid air. Cold, smoke then and just drag. Continued to sing. The volume is bad. Soon it will get light, time to wake up the guy. They went to the village first along the road, and just before the edge of the forest moved a little to the side carefully, stepping on the rustling underfoot. Leaves stuck in the bushes. From here the expensive part of the grandmother was also looked through Novgorod Sara, and the corner of the house. Is it true? Fog interfered. It will dissipate soon. Creak door. Babkina head appeared over a pile of firewood, dumped by the barn. Some minutes she fumbled for firewood, then the door creaked again. More after a couple of minutes, the grandmother came out and headed for the gates. Some time and respect was seen, but here is a figurine with a box on its shoulders and two shelves, looking like a skier with a backpack, appeared on the road, leading to the forest. After waiting another 10 minutes, Gray raised accomplices and they went to the barn through the garden. Quietly walking up to the pile of firewood, they stopped. Forward went Skinny. Full Mela opened almost any lock, and such a cheap Chinese hinge took him no more than a minute. Looking around again, they entered the house. In the hallway smelled of spicy dry herbs and mushrooms. Machoas apples stood right there in the corner, and bunches of herbs were hung on the ceiling under the wall. They have the same fun knitting mushrooms. Having passed and blew into the kitchen, they looked around and marveled at the modesty, environment. For a long time they didn't see it, as if you were in a museum. Old wooden furniture, small kitchen table, covered with such an ancient oilcloth tablecloth, the drawing has been erased. The end the cable embraced, that looked gray. Fringe on the table, homemade bread wrapped in a clean kitchen towel, obviously fresh out of the oven, still hot at all and nothing more. Tired. A stool tied with a seat cover, pie clean, the kettle is still warm and a cast iron cauldron with boiled potatoes in their skins. Small old yepper not even plugged in. They are like in a closet, just a few bags of flour are stored, cereals and vermicelli. Meat it doesn't smell here. Old antediluvian kitchen cupboard, some simple utensils, ordinary faceted glasses with glass holders. On the lower shelves neatly contained several clean old saucepans and a couple of jars of jam. Gap looked into the washstand, one heavily ESL engulfed. Old toothbrush, a small tube of the cheapest toothpaste and laundry soap. Gray. Regular laundry soap, not toilet on hooks. Near clean waffle towel, though white, but also already clearly of respectable age. On semi-woven track, one for the whole room. She is confused from the entrance to the iron bed. The cover is old, some indistinct dog trinca but the pillows are lined with a slide and covered, starched with lace doily. Gap checked under the mattress. But nothing. I empty under the bed. Gray opened the doors of the old slate once painted with pink paint. On hangers one thin draped coat, some marsh-colored jacket, old overcoat, which obviously has not been brought to light for years. On half-empty shelves some bed linen, a couple of sets giving flannelette colorful robes, also not new, but carefully washed them in complex stacks. On top shelf a few scarves, whites, cotton, and one black. Not finding nothing, Sulphur turned to an accomplice. I told you, what the fuck is here? Only time wasted. But gapped, you didn't want to give up just like that. Must send grandmother to have a stash. All old women save themselves for a rainy day. Skinny, I'll look. Whoa. They're hanging icon. Not sandy, ordinary paper, but adorned with starch. Openwork tape, lace, and cheap my artificial flowers. Under icon's small wooden pedestal, also covered with a lace napkin. Skinny looked into the cabinet, church candles and a liter jar of water, probably from the church. Per book and a large reed Bible. Under her some box. Maybe, here I am, savings coming up to the table. Skinny opened the box. Yes, she really had all the most valuable. Yellowed from time to time children's undershirts with a blueberry, pictures embroidered on the chest, a couple of old portraits. It seems that grandma's parents. I hear she is when she was young, 50s fashion wedding dress and veil. Groom next to her, so serious, with big bushy mustache. Here is another family portrait. Also a woman holding a 4-year-old boy in her arms. And a couple of children's black and white photos. Boy do became like his mustachioed father, only he clearly almost does not remember him. Yellowed with time. The marriage certificate lies with another form. Mother was widowed just a few years after marriage. Other no wedding photos, yes, and forms too. Means she raised her son. Sulphur took a photograph of a teenager. Schoolboy at graduation. Something familiar seemed to him even in the wedding photo of his parents, and now he was trying to remember. How do you know this guy's face? Gap took another photo. 5 people are unlikely to stand on it, hugging, all in uniform. Afghanistan, exactly. Gray, I recognized myself as the extreme guy on the left, and in the center is this kid from graduation, landlady's son, that old woman. Gray stared at this group photo for a long time. He returned to such a distant past. He then, too, immediately after school, joined the army, and like many others, after training, they were sent to perform international duty. Only he fulfilled this duty for a short time. In the first battle he was severely shell-shocked. This guy pulled it out then, saved his move. He was wounded in the leg and shoulder. Gray left a scar on his head. He didn't see the guy again. Knew that he was also sent to the hospital, but what happened to him then, Sulphur did not know. Yellow document explained, why Gray then I never met that guy again. I was awarded posthumously. Sulphur sat on a stool for a long time, looking at the yellowed paper. Words blurred before his eyes. On the bottom of the box is a stale medal for his, Gray, salvation. This all, what was in the box. All, what was valuable for a lonely old woman, before chewing his life on the edge of a remote village. Accomplices have never seen their leader. Taki, they didn't even think that a seasoned criminal could react this way to some old papers. He, finally, was able to speak. Hoarse out of excitement in his voice, he briefly explained to his friends, what kind of medal is this and who is this guy with him in the photo, and that now he can't just leave this house so easily. So, where is the old woman's money? Gap asked in bewilderment. Money such old women usually put under the oilcloth on the corner of the table, Gray explained. How he assumed, there, where the corner was more worn, under the oilcloth, and laid 2 pieces of paper. Yes, I spend more on cigarettes. For a rainy day, where is she? Not Gap, calm down. She had a rainy day, Gray explained. Stretching Gap there at the document, who was still holding. That understood, lowered his head, took under the oilcloth and put the money back, carefully corrected the oilcloth. Skinny paused, then asked, maybe, I'll chop wood for her. .2 drive hard, otherwise Python obviously only would I help, supported Gap. Fine, the leader agreed. Gray neatly put everything in the box, which they then took out and laid out on the table. More than once I looked at a beautiful young woman in a wedding photo and at a graduate boy. Looked around on both sides, looked at the fridge again and the kitchen buffet. Touched warm homemade bread through a towel, sighed, and 100 went to the exit. Gapped, we were already taking turns chopping firewood and throwing it neatly under the wall of the barn. There was a lot of firewood, half-day work, if not more to port one. Gray looked how they work calmly and in a businesslike way, and nodded in satisfaction. You hear you can manage without me, and I'll be back soon. Looked at the leader questioningly. I'll take some money, your destiny, hit the store, I will buy some pasta there, sausages of any kind. Skinny nodded approvingly, and Gapped was also clearly not against. Gone towards the forest, started the car and soon was already driving past the old woman in the yard towards the center. Villages to the store. Saleswoman a little surprised by the new buyer, but dared not ask, especially since he was filled up with orders. Let's know what kind of can, dumpling fish, what else you have pate, how much, well, 10 pieces. A stew comes in a box if there, so let's get those sausages over there a couple of kilograms. More doctor's sausages slept a kg fresh only in the morning, so I haven't finished everything yet. You will issue later. Here's a couple more packs of tea, what do you have in fresh, cookies oatmeal I let's mint gingerbread. What Togo, that listed. Oatmeal Dnipro I gingerbread per kilo. You have them in boxes. Here and come on in boxes. How many there? Are in the package cookies to kilograms, gingerbread 3. Well and count by 2 and 3. So, sugar up to 5 kilograms is not better than 10. Further what kind of cereals, pearl barley, buckwheat, fig, millet, semolina. Let's all have 5 kilos. And premium flour. Yes, and 10 kilograms. Then more condensed milk cans 10. What fresh sweet do you have? Which candy or something sweets we got? Pink, today's here in a box of kilos 800 take let's the whole I give me that bottle. Having done store weekly revenue, sulfur returned to the house grandmother drag, you just, replaced Gappity. He wielded an axe and and less tired so the guy went to pick up the leader. They together with Gray unloaded the cars carried everything to the kitchen, cereals and canned food were placed by the bed. After Drag brought water to the washstand. They washed in order. Gray took out 4 glasses from the cupboard without coasters, took a box out of the nightstand, took a picture of a guy, put it on the bedside table under the icon, poured it into one of the glasses and placed it in front of the photo. Took bread and broke it in half. Broke off the piece and put it on top of the glass. Danced a little bit in 3 steel glasses. Dal accomplice. They drank without clinking glasses. Gapped would like more, but he's driving. He took the bottle, to get her later, when they came to town, a skinny for sniffing fragrant bread. Yes, so we won't take anything at all, sighed. But what here we can take bread from the hostess, she bakes herself, said Gray and divided the bread in half, stretching accomplices to both pieces. They silently took and went to the exit. First for many years Sulphur felt so satisfied. They didn't take anything here, even vice versa, Sulphur I spent the lion's share of my money, but the feeling is, as if a very good house was surrounded. Before getting out, Gray looked around the house again. Now his eyes were pleased. Leaving, he stopped near the table and put several large pieces of paper under the corner of the oilcloth on top of those that lay there. Corrected oilcloth and above. Skinny hung the lock back under the wall of the Sarah and lay neatly on the chopped firewood. The yard was in order. Ginger the cat was watching from the roof of the barn how 3 men went out the gate, sat down in the dirt car and drove towards the city. He for a long time did not dare to go down and smell the firewood, axe, cigarette butts in the grass. Sat and looked out at his old lady, when she returned from the forest and let him into the house. Peered, finally saw his mistress, jumped off, went forward. Land I spoke, posted everything, and the grandmother listens to him and sentences, missed you. Waited. Just talking. The sighs took cover. Don't let me go there, remember your legs. The code and the truth circled around women's feet, trying to stroke 2 at once. Unfolded base rubbed with a big head. Grandmother only looked, how to keep the balance. She opened the lock though. Somehow that's not how the castle hangs. Maybe so. As all the old have become, everyone already forgets. Door creaked softly, But the old woman did not enter the house. What, it wasn't like that, what that interfered with the view? She looked around the yard. Well, certainly, chopped firewood neatly stacked. The same way not Timuravites have already been returned. Good, since there is no way to cope with a heavy axe, she was completely tormented. I must go to school, give thanks. The old lady finally entered the coolness of the house. I's not immediately accustomed to almost twilight. How are you used to? So she froze. What is this? What this is happening in her house? Everywhere there were packages, some boxes. The old lady carefully looked into the package, who stood right on the table and did not give rest to the cat. Anchovies, something else, meat in beautiful bags. This is how the package did not get into debt. The castle is in place. She went around the house, wearing glasses on the nose, watched, read in syllables. Gingerbread mint. The more she looked at everything, the more confused. Yes, where is it all from? What is this happening? Then I saw a photo of my son, cup, covered with bread. A village nearby came up. What is this sunny same? This she understood, that somehow all this wealth, which is enough for her for 6 months, if not more, something to do with her son. How? Could the old lady not understand this? But thinking a little, I decided, which will not. Ginger the cat immediately jumped on his grandmother's knees and lay down, admonished. He certainly doesn't mind trying it, what smells so delicious in the package, but it's also good to lie down on your own knees. Cat knew that the grandmother would sit, rest, and then he would remember. Grandmother sat, stroked the cat. I was thinking about something, and tears rolled down your cheeks, lost in deep wrinkles. Big the old birch gently swayed its thin branches and dropped its yellow leaves all around in a yard, to the front garden, on the road, on the tracks of a car that has gone.